The massive space station rotated slowly against the backdrop of 1,000 stars. Inside, beings from across the galaxy gathered in the observation deck, their various appendages pressed against the transparent aluminum windows. They watched as the latest batch of survival students filed into the testing arena below. Professor Zixatheta adjusted her 4 optical stalks, focusing on the mixed group of species entering the chamber. Her tentacles rippled with concern as she noticed the 3 humans among them. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planets known to support intelligent life. The humans looked so fragile compared to the armored Krellians or the multi-limbed Vorthon students. "Those poor creatures," whispered Apprentice Yorth, his feathers rustling nervously. "The humans won't last 5 minutes in the extreme survival test. Should we not warn them?" The professor's chromatophores shifted to a pattern indicating disagreement. "The Galactic Education Council mandates all species must take the same test. No exceptions." Down in the preparation room, Jake Martinez stretched his arms above his head, working out the kinks from the long shuttle ride. Beside him, Chen Wei checked her standard-issue survival pack, while Amara Okafor braided her hair to keep it out of her face. "So what do you think they'll throw at us?" Jake asked, grinning at his teammates. Chen shrugged. "The orientation said something about extreme temperatures, hostile environments, and resource scarcity. Sounds like camping?" Amara laughed. "My grandmother's village in Nigeria had worse conditions than what they described. At least here we get equipment." Around them, other species were performing elaborate preparation rituals. The Krellians were secreting additional layers of their natural armor. The Vorthons were synchronizing their hive mind connections. The delicate Etherians were weaving protective energy fields around themselves. A Krellian student, Gorthak, lumbered over to the humans. His translator crackled to life. "Small mammals, you should withdraw now. This test designed for superior species. Your soft skin will not survive first challenge." Jake looked up at the 8-foot-tall, armored being and smiled. "Thanks for the concern, buddy. We'll manage." Gorthak's armor plates rattled in what might have been confusion or amusement. "You have death wish? Temperature will drop to -80 units. Your species has no natural protection." -80? Chen did a quick mental conversion. "That's about -60 Celsius. Not great, but doable." The Krellian backed away slowly, clearly thinking the humans had gone insane. A melodious chime signaled the start of the test. The massive doors to the survival arena opened, revealing a stark white chamber. Even from the entrance, they could feel the cold radiating outward. "First phase, Arctic survival," announced the automated system. "Survive for 6 hours. Resources are limited. Work together or separately as your species prefers." The various alien students rushed forward, each group employing their species' unique adaptations. The Krellians' armor began generating heat. The Vorthons huddled together, sharing body warmth through their hive connection. The Etherians' energy fields glowed brighter. The 3 humans walked in casually, looking around with interest. "Reminds me of that winter training in Alaska," Jake commented, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I was thinking more of my research station in Antarctica," Chen added, already scanning the environment for resources. The arena was vast, designed to simulate a frozen wasteland. Scattered throughout were various materials: metal sheets, frozen plant matter, chemical heating packs that required complex assembly, and puzzles that would unlock additional supplies. Most species made a beeline for the heating packs, fighting over the limited supply. The humans, however, went straight for the metal sheets and plant matter. "What are the Deathworlders doing?" muttered a Vorthon through the hive connection. "Those materials provide no warmth." Jake and Amara quickly assembled a small shelter using the metal sheets, while Chen gathered the frozen plant matter. Within minutes, they had a basic structure that blocked the worst of the wind. "Fire?" Amara asked. "On it," Chen replied, pulling out the standard-issue multi-tool from her pack. She used the metal edge to create sparks, catching them on some dried fiber she'd separated from the plant matter. Soon, a small fire crackled inside their shelter. Up in the observation deck, Professor Zixatheta's chromatophores were cycling through colors of shock. They created combustion? In a low-oxygen environment? Their planet must have similar conditions, Yorth observed, his feathers puffed out in amazement. The humans sat comfortably around their fire, occasionally adding more plant matter. Jake had even started melting ice in a curved piece of metal, creating drinking water. "Anyone else think it's kind of warm in here now?" Amara asked, unzipping her standard-issue jacket slightly. Meanwhile, the other species were struggling. The Krellians' armor heating was draining their energy reserves rapidly. The Vorthons' huddle strategy worked but limited their mobility. The Etherians were maintaining their protective fields but couldn't move without dropping them. A Selenian student, covered in thick fur that should have been ideal for cold weather, stumbled near the human shelter. She was shivering violently, her fur matted with ice. "Hey, you okay?" Jake called out. The universal translator conveyed her response through chattering teeth. "Cold. Fur freezes. Cannot move." Without hesitation, the humans brought her into their shelter. Amara helped her sit near the fire while Chen examined her fur. "The moisture in your fur is freezing," Chen explained. "You need to dry it out." She showed the Solanian how to position herself near the fire without getting too close. Why help?" the Solanian asked, bewildered. "Competition should eliminate opponents." Jake shrugged. "Where we come from, you don't leave someone to freeze. Besides, there's room for everyone." Word spread among the struggling students. Soon, a steady stream of aliens were approaching the human shelter. Each time, the humans welcomed them, showed them how to build fires, how to construct windbreaks, how to conserve body heat through proper positioning. The observation deck was in chaos. Professors from various species were frantically taking notes, recording the unprecedented cooperation. "They're teaching everyone," Professor Zixatheta observed, "sharing survival techniques freely." 3 hours into the test, the Arctic chamber had transformed. Where once desperate aliens had struggled alone, now multiple fire-lit shelters dotted the landscape. The humans moved between groups, checking on everyone, sharing tips, making jokes that the translators struggled to convey. Chen had even figured out that some of the complex heating packs could be activated by simply hitting them hard against a rock, bypassing the puzzles entirely. This information spread quickly, ensuring everyone had backup heat sources. When the 6-hour mark approached, every single student was not only surviving but thriving. The automatic systems registered this unprecedented 100% survival rate and initiated the second phase early. Phase 2, Desert Survival, Extreme Heat Incoming, Prepare accordingly. The temperature began to rise rapidly. Ice melted, turning the ground muddy before drying into cracked earth. The fires that had been life-saving moments ago became hazards. Most species panicked. The cold-adapted beings suffered immediately, but the humans simply adapted their strategy. "Okay, everyone, listen up," Amara called out, her voice carrying across the arena. "Desert survival is about conservation and shade. Put out the fires and use those metal sheets as sun shields instead." Jake demonstrated how to angle the sheets for maximum shade while allowing airflow. Chen showed how to use the now-empty heating packs to store water from the melting ice. "In deserts, you don't move during peak heat," she explained to a group of struggling Krellians. "Rest in shade, travel at dawn and dusk." The Etherians, who had struggled with the cold, found the heat more manageable. They returned the favor by using their energy fields to create small areas of cooler temperature where the most heat-sensitive species could rest. The Vorthons discovered their hive mind was excellent for coordinating water location and sharing. They began working with the humans to ensure everyone stayed hydrated. Hours passed. The temperature soared to levels that would kill unprotected humans on Earth, but the suits they wore provided basic protection. More importantly, their knowledge of desert survival techniques kept everyone alive. Jake had even started a card game in one of the larger shelters, using pieces of dried plant matter as chips. The mix of species sitting in the circle, each learning a human game while surviving extreme heat, would have been comical if it wasn't so impressive. "Royal flush," announced Gorthak the Krellian, laying down his cards with a satisfied rumble. "You can't have a royal flush with only 3 cards, big guy," Jake laughed. "Also, we're playing Go Fish." The shelter erupted in various forms of alien laughter. Professor Zixatheta had long since abandoned any pretense of professional detachment. Her optical stalks were locked on the human students who had turned a survival test into a social event. "How?" Yorth asked. "Their planet has deserts, yes, but nothing this extreme. How do they adapt so quickly?" "I think," the professor said slowly, "we have underestimated what it means to be from a death world. It's not about physical adaptations. It's about mental flexibility." The desert phase ended with another 100% survival rate. The system, not programmed for this outcome, cycled through several options before settling on Phase 3. Phase 3, toxic atmosphere, protective equipment mandatory. Green gas began seeping into the arena. Every student quickly donned their breathing apparatus, standard equipment in their survival packs that most had forgotten about while focusing on temperature extremes. The humans helped those who struggled with their masks, checking seals and ensuring everyone was protected. The toxic phase was actually easier than the environmental extremes, requiring only patience and careful conservation of air supplies. Chen had already calculated the burn rate and organized everyone into breathing rotations, where they would share masks to extend their supply. The Vorthons' ability to slow their metabolism proved invaluable here, and they coached other species on meditation techniques. "This is actually kind of nice," Amara commented during a rest period, "like a really weird yoga class." As the test continued, something remarkable happened. The various species stopped seeing it as a challenge to overcome and started treating it as a puzzle to solve together. The humans hadn't just survived, they had transformed the entire nature of the test. When the final phase arrived, predator simulation, mechanical creatures emerged from hidden panels. They were designed to hunt and eliminate students, forcing them to hide or defend themselves. The response was immediate and coordinated. The Krellians formed a defensive line with their armor. The Etherians created warning signals with their energy fields. The Vorthans established a communication network, and the humans studied the predators' patterns for about 10 minutes. Then Jake stood up and walked directly toward one. "Jake, what are you doing?" Chen called out. "Testing something," he replied. The mechanical predator charged. Jake stood his ground until the last second, then simply stepped aside. The predator's momentum carried it past him, and it took several seconds to turn around. "They're not very smart," Jake announced. "Basic programming. They charge in straight lines and have a turning radius of about 3 meters. Within an hour, the students had turned predator avoidance into a sport. The Krellians were using the predator's charging momentum against them, sending them crashing into walls. The more agile species were leading them in circles. The humans had somehow taught everyone to play what they called mechanical bullfighting. Amara had even managed to climb onto one of the larger predators and was riding it around the arena, whooping like she was at a rodeo. This inspired several others to attempt the same, with varying degrees of success. By the time the test officially ended, the observation deck was silent. The professors, administrators, and observers could only stare as the mixed group of students emerged from the arena. They were dirty, exhausted, but laughing and chatting like old friends. The three humans were at the center of it all, surrounded by aliens who had started the day viewing them as weak, fragile creatures from a death world. Now they were exchanging contact information and making plans to study together. "Attention all students," the automated system announced. "Test results are being calculated. Please report to debriefing room 7. As the group moved toward the debriefing room, Gorthak placed a massive armored hand on Jake's shoulder. "Human Jake, I apologize for earlier words. You are not weak mammals. You are teachers?" Jake grinned. "Nah, we're just used to things trying to kill us. Earth's like that test every day, just with better scenery and worse food." "Worse food?" Chen added. "You didn't try the ration packs." "I'm pretty sure they were flavored with suffering." Professor Zixatheta observed the departing students, her chromatophores settling into a pattern of deep thought. She turned to Yorth. "We need to completely revise our understanding of Deathworld species." "What do you mean, Professor?" "We assumed surviving on a Deathworld made them physically tougher. But look at what just happened. They didn't overpower the challenges. They outsmarted them. More importantly, they brought everyone else along." She pulled up the test recordings on her data pad. "Every previous run of this test has had a failure rate of at least 30%. The best teams sometimes achieve 50% survival. These humans achieved 100% survival, not by being the strongest, but by making everyone else stronger." In the debriefing room, the test administrator, an ancient Valdorian whose species had designed the original survival tests, looked at the results with what might have been confusion on his crystalline features. "In 10,000 cycles of this test," he announced, "we have never seen results like these." He focused on the three humans. "You not only survived every phase but ensured every participant survived. This was not the test's intent." "Sorry?" Amara offered, though she didn't sound sorry at all. "No," the administrator said after a pause. "Don't apologize. You have shown us something we failed to consider. The test was designed to identify those who could survive extreme conditions. You have demonstrated something far more valuable, the ability to ensure others survive extreme conditions." He turned to address all the students. "Full marks for everyone. Additionally, the human students will receive commendations for innovative problem-solving and interspecies cooperation." The room erupted in various forms of applause and celebration. As they filed out, Chen looked at her companions. "Think we should tell them about the time you survived a week in Death Valley with just a knife and a bad attitude? Or when you spent 3 months in Antarctica with broken heating equipment?" Jake countered. "Let's not," Amara decided. "They already look at us weird enough." As news of the test spread across the station, it sparked discussions in academic circles throughout the galaxy. The humans hadn't just passed the extreme survival test, they had fundamentally challenged assumptions about what survival meant. Later that evening in the human quarters, the three friends finally had a moment to relax. They'd been invited to no fewer than 12 different study groups, 3 research projects, and 1 Krellian armor polishing ceremony, which Jake suspected might have been a date. "So," Chen said, sprawled on the common room couch, "think they'll make the test harder next time?" "Probably," Jake replied, tossing her a drink from their private stash of Earth beverages. "But here's the thing. Making it harder won't change the outcome." Amara nodded, accepting her own drink. "Because we're not really that special. Any human could have done what we did." And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying realization of all for the galaxy's academic community. The 3 humans who had casually mastered their extreme survival test weren't exceptional by Earth standards. They were just average people from a death world where cooperation and adaptation were as natural as breathing. As the station continued its slow rotation among the stars, Professor Zixatheta stood in her office, composing a report that would shake the foundations of xenobiological studies. Her title, Deathworld Evolution, When Survival Selects for Teachers. She paused, considering her words carefully, then added a subtitle. A study of human adaptability and its implications for galactic society. Outside her window, she could see the human quarters. Laughter drifted across the station's communication system. They were apparently teaching the Krellians something called poker while sharing stories about Earth wildlife that the universal translators were struggling to convey accurately. The professor's chromatophores shifted to amusement. The galaxy had no idea what it had just encountered. Deathworlders weren't just survivors. They were survivors who assumed everyone else could be one too, given the right knowledge. And they were eager to share. The morning after the survival test, the space station's cafeteria buzzed with more excitement than usual. News of the humans' performance had spread through every deck, department, and dormitory. Aliens who had never given the Deathworlders a second glance now watched them with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Jake, Chen, and Amara sat at their usual table, trying to enjoy what the station called breakfast. Jake poked at a gelatinous cube that quivered whenever he touched it. "I'm 90% sure this is alive," he muttered. "The nutrition board says it's perfectly safe for human consumption," Chen replied, though she hadn't touched hers either. "The nutrition board also thinks ketchup is a rare Earth delicacy because someone told them it was made from tomato blood," Amara pointed out. Their conversation was interrupted by a shadow falling across their table. They looked up to find Administrator Corlon, the head of the station's Advanced Studies program. The Celestari official's crystalline form refracted the cafeteria lights into rainbow patterns. "Humans," Corlon began, his harmonious voice carrying undertones of respect. "The Academic Council has been reviewing yesterday's test results. We have a proposition." The three exchanged glances. In their experience, official propositions usually meant either paperwork or trouble. "We're listening," Amara said carefully. "The extreme survival course is being restructured based on your unique approach. We would like you to serve as assistant instructors for the next session." Jake nearly choked on his definitely not alive breakfast cube. "You want us to teach?" "The results speak for themselves," Corlon continued. "Your methods achieved unprecedented success. However, we need to understand if this was an anomaly or if human instruction methods can be replicated across different scenarios." "What kind of scenarios?" Chen asked, her scientific curiosity piqued. Corlon produced a holographic display showing various environments. "We've designed new tests, void exposure protocols, gravity fluctuation chambers, radiation zones, scenarios that even Deathworlders should find challenging." The three humans studied the list. Where most species might have seen impossibly deadly challenges, they saw familiar concepts. "Void exposure, so basically like high-altitude training?" Jake mused. "Gravity fluctuation, sounds like those carnival rides but with science," Amara added. "Radiation zones could be tricky," Chen admitted, "but with proper shielding protocols." Corlon's form flickered in what might have been surprise. "You're not concerned?" "Should we be?" Amara asked. "Look, Administrator, where we come from, people do dangerous things for fun. We jump out of perfectly good aircraft, dive to the ocean floor, and climb mountains that actively try to kill us. At least here we'll have proper equipment." "Very well," Corlon said after a pause. "Classes begin tomorrow. You'll be working with Professor Zixa Theta. Try not to traumatize the students too badly." As the administrator glided away, Jake turned to his friends. "Did we just agree to teach aliens how to survive things that might actually kill us?" "Yep," Chen confirmed. "Should be fun." The next morning found them in the Advanced Studies wing, where Professor Zixa Theta was reviewing student files. Her optical stalks swiveled to focus on them as they entered. "Ah, the Deathworlder teaching assistants, I've been analyzing your previous performance. Remarkable." "Just doing what comes naturally," Jake said. "So what's the plan?" The professor pulled up a holographic class roster. 24 students from 16 species. Most failed the previous version of the test. They've been given a second chance with new instruction methods. Amara studied the list. I see Gorthak signed up. That's good. He catches on quick. Indeed, though I'm concerned about some of the more fragile species. The Etherians, in particular, have minimal physical resilience. Physical resilience is overrated, Chen interjected. Humans are physically weak compared to most Earth predators. We survived through intelligence and cooperation. And spite, Jake added. Never underestimate the power of spite. The professor's chromatophores shifted to a pattern indicating confusion. Spite? Humans have this thing, Amara explained, where if something tries to kill us, we take it personally, like, how dare that mountain think it can beat me? I'll show it who's boss. You? Compete with geological formations? You should see what we do with oceans, Jake grinned. Their first class assembled in Training Bay 7. The students were a mix of species, all looking apprehensive. Some wore additional protective gear, others had brought medical supplies. One Vorthon had apparently brought what looked like a will. Okay, everyone, gather round, Amara called out. First things first, anyone here actually want to die today? Silence. A few tentacles raised hesitantly. Those aren't hands, put them down, she continued. Good, because dying is not on today's schedule. Chen? Chen stepped forward with a box of equipment. Before we start any survival training, we need to cover the basics. These are human-designed safety protocols. Rule 1, redundancy. Every critical system needs a backup. She began distributing items, emergency beacons, basic medical supplies, water purification tablets. The aliens examined them with confusion. But these aren't standard issue, a Selenian student protested. The equipment regulations state, the equipment regulations were written by species who think a 40-degree temperature range is extreme, Jake interrupted. Humans live in places where the temperature can swing that much in a single day. We've learned to prepare for everything. He picked up an emergency beacon. This little thing has saved more human lives than any armor or weapon. Because the best survival tool isn't strength, it's making sure someone knows where to find your body. That's morbid, muttered an Etherian. That's realistic, Jake corrected. Now, let's talk about the buddy system. The students looked confused. Amara explained, on Earth, we learned that solo survival is usually just slow suicide. Everyone pairs up. Different species if possible. Your weakness might be their strength. They spent an hour organizing pairs, teaching basic communication protocols, and establishing check-in procedures. The aliens seemed baffled by the emphasis on teamwork over individual prowess. But what if my partner slows me down? Gorthak asked, gesturing to his Etherian partner who barely came up to his knee. Then you adapt, Chen said firmly. Your partner might save your life in ways you don't expect. Strength isn't everything, Professor Zixatheta observed from the control room as the humans led the students through basic exercises. They weren't teaching survival techniques yet. They were building a foundation of trust and communication. Fascinating, she murmured. They're restructuring the entire social dynamic. The first real test came when Jake announced they'd be entering the Void simulation chamber. Void exposure is one of the deadliest scenarios in space, he explained. Your suit fails, you've got about 15 seconds of useful consciousness. So what do? A Krellian raised an armored hand. Activate emergency protocols? Your suits are already failing in this scenario, Jake clarified. What else? Silence. Anyone ever hear of the human who survived vacuum exposure for nearly 2 minutes? Chen asked. When heads shook, or equivalent gestures, she continued. He exhaled immediately to prevent lung damage, stayed calm, and trusted his team to get him to safety. He survived because he knew what to do and didn't panic. That's impossible, an Etherian protested. the physics alone. Welcome to being human, Amara grinned. We're too stubborn to die when physics says we should. Now everyone practice the exhale technique. The next hour was spent teaching aliens how to exhale properly, how to curl into a protective position, and how to signal distress in vacuum. The humans demonstrated each technique, treating exposure to the void like it was just another inconvenience rather than certain death. When they finally entered the simulation chamber, the results were remarkable. Instead of the usual panic when the pressure dropped, students followed the protocols. They exhaled, signaled, and worked in pairs to reach emergency stations. The 15-second deadline passed with everyone still functional. How? Professor Zix Theta demanded when they exited. The physiological stress alone should have incapacitated half of them. You're thinking about it wrong, Jake explained. Stress is mostly mental. If you know what's happening and have a plan, your body can handle more than you think. Besides, Chen added, we didn't actually expose them to full vacuum. Just enough pressure drop to simulate it. The fear of vacuum is usually worse than vacuum itself. Over the following weeks, the humans revolutionized survival training. They introduced concepts that seemed absurd to other species, but proved remarkably effective. Controlled falling, Amara announced one day, standing at the edge of a 30-foot platform. Sometimes the only way out is down. She demonstrated a parachute landing fall, distributing the impact across her body. The students watched in horror as she hit the ground and rolled to her feet, uninjured. Your turn, she said cheerfully. Stress inoculation, Chen explained during another session. We expose you to controlled amounts of stress so real emergencies don't overwhelm you. This involved everything from loud noises to flashing lights to simulated equipment failures. The humans treated each scenario like a game, turning fear into familiarity. Percussive maintenance, Jake taught, hitting a malfunctioning device with a wrench. It sparked to life. Sometimes the sophisticated approach isn't the right approach, but perhaps the most revolutionary concept was what the humans called acceptable losses. You can't save everyone, Amara said seriously during a mass casualty simulation. Sometimes you have to choose who lives. It's horrible, it's unfair, and it's reality. The aliens struggled with this concept. Many species had evolved with strong protective instincts for all members of their group. How do you choose? Avorthon asked, distressed by the mere thought. You save who you can save, Chen replied. And you don't waste time on guilt until everyone else is safe. That seems cold, an Etherian observed. It is cold, Jake agreed. But cold logic keeps more people alive than warm feelings. As weeks turned into months, transformation occurred. Students who had entered the program as terrified individuals emerged as confident survivors. More importantly, they emerged as teams. The Krellians learned to use their strength to protect weaker species. The Etherians discovered their energy manipulation could provide light and warmth in emergencies. The Vorthans became communication hubs, coordinating group efforts with their hive mind abilities. And through it all, the humans moved among them like chaos coordinators, turning every weakness into strength, every fear into fuel. One particularly memorable session involved the hostile flora simulation. The room filled with aggressive plant-like constructs that responded to movement and heat. Most species' first instinct was to fight or flee. The human's first instinct was to study. Look at the pattern, Chen pointed out. Watching the constructs wave, they're not actually aggressive. They're responding to carbon dioxide. Everyone breathes shallow and moves slow. Within minutes, what had been designed as a combat scenario became a stealth exercise. Students learned to control their breathing, move deliberately, and work together to navigate the hostile environment. How did you know? Professor Zix Theta asked later. Venus flytraps, Jake shrugged. Earth has plants that eat animals. We learned to respect plant life real quick. The professor made another note about Death World evolution. Not every session was successful. During a radiation exposure drill, 2 students panicked and had to be evacuated. A gravity fluctuation test left several species violently ill. One memorable incident involved Jake misjudging an alien's flexibility and accidentally dislocating something that might have been a shoulder. But each failure became a learning opportunity. The humans taught the students to analyze what went wrong, adapt their approach, and try again. Failure isn't the opposite of success, Amara explained during one debrief. It's a stepping stone to success. That's a very human perspective, noted Yorth, who had taken to attending sessions. Is there any other kind? She replied. The real test came during an unplanned emergency. An actual system failure in Section C vented atmosphere into space. While emergency protocols activated, several students were caught in the affected area. Without hesitation, the trained students responded. They used their buddy system, shared emergency air supplies, and followed vacuum exposure protocols. The Krellians used their strength to force open jammed doors. The Etherians created energy barriers to slow air loss. The humans coordinated the evacuation with calm efficiency. Everyone survived. The incident made station-wide news. Administrator Corlin himself came to commend the students. In 50 years of operation, we've never had 0 casualties during a major breach, he announced. Your training saved lives. Don't thank us, Jake said, gesturing to the students. Thank them. We just showed them what they were already capable of. Later, in the debriefing room, Professor Zix Theta reviewed the footage with the human instructors. You've created something unprecedented, she said. A survival protocol that works across species barriers. We didn't create anything, Chen corrected. We just shared what humans have learned over millennia. Survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being adaptable and working together. And being too stubborn to die, Jake added. That too, Amara agreed. As the semester progressed, requests poured in from other stations, planets, and organizations. Everyone wanted to learn the human method of survival training. We've started something, Chen observed one evening as they reviewed the requests. Something good, I hope, Amara said. Jake raised his drink. Actual Earth coffee, worth its weight in platinum out here. To Deathworlders, may we continue to confuse and terrify the galaxy with our refusal to die. They clinked cups, unaware that their approach to survival training would revolutionize emergency preparedness across known space. Species that had never cooperated before were now training together, sharing techniques, and building bonds that transcended biological differences. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humans. No longer were they seen as fragile creatures from a hostile world. They were recognized as what they truly were. Survivors who had faced death so often it had become mundane. Teachers who shared knowledge freely, and beings who believed everyone deserved a chance to live another day. The Deathworlders hadn't just aced the extreme survival class. They had rewritten it entirely, proving that the greatest survival tool wasn't fang or claw or armor. It was the simple belief that everyone could survive if given the right tools and knowledge. And the stubborn, spiteful, wonderful human determination to make sure they did. 6 months after the humans began their revolutionary teaching methods, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the ancient chambers of the Central Assembly, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of evolution's creativity. The topic of discussion, the human paradox. High Counselor Vrexmai, a being of pure energy from the Photon Collective, pulsed with concern as she addressed the assembly. The Deathworlder influence has spread beyond academic institutions. Military units are adopting their tactics. Civilians are practicing their methods. Some colonies have reported citizens deliberately seeking out dangerous situations for training. Murmurs rippled through the assembly in various languages and frequencies. "The humans have destabilized our entire approach to safety," complained Ambassador Thule from the Cautionary Alliance. "My people now have younglings who want to learn something called parkour. They're jumping off buildings. For recreation." On the station, Jake, Chen, and Amara watched the council session on a view screen in the faculty lounge. They'd been invited to attend but politely declined, sensing it might turn into a trial. "They're making us sound like we're corrupting the youth," Jake commented, munching on something that might have been popcorn if popcorn could move. "Aren't we?" Chen asked with a grin. "Yesterday I saw a group of Etherians practicing fire starting, beings made of energy, learning to make fire. The irony was beautiful." Amara shushed them as a familiar figure took the speaking platform. Gorthak, their former student, now wore the ceremonial armor of a Krellian emergency response commander. "Honored counselors," his translated voice boomed through the chamber, "I stand before you as proof of human methods. 6 months ago, I believed survival meant overpowering threats. The humans taught me survival means outthinking them." He gestured to a mixed-species team standing at attention behind him. "My unit has responded to 47 emergencies using human protocols. Our casualty rate has dropped by 80%. These are not corrupting influences. These are life-saving revelations." The council erupted in debate. Some members argued for restricting human influence, others for mandatory adoption of their methods. The argument might have continued for hours, if not for what happened next. Every alarm in the station suddenly screamed to life. "Catastrophic system failure," the automated voice announced with artificial calm. "Main reactor breach imminent. Estimated time to critical failure, 43 minutes. The council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives scrambled for evacuation pods, centuries of diplomatic protocol abandoned in the face of immediate danger. In the faculty lounge, the 3 humans were already moving. "Chen, get to the reactor room. See what's actually happening," Jake ordered, his casual demeanor replaced by focused intensity. "Amara, coordinate with station security. I'll hit the training bays and organize the students." "On it," they replied in unison, splitting up without hesitation. Chen arrived at the reactor room to find the engineering staff in full panic. The chief engineer, a 6-armed mechanical, was frantically typing on multiple consoles. "What's the situation?" Chen demanded. "Cascade failure in the primary cooling system," the engineer replied without looking up. "Backup systems aren't responding. Core temperature rising exponentially." Chen studied the readouts, her mind racing through possibilities. The reactor design was unfamiliar, but physics was physics. "Show me the coolant flow diagram," she ordered. "What? Why? We need to evacuate." "Show me the diagram." The engineer pulled up the schematic. Chen traced the flow patterns, then pointed to a junction point. "There. The backup systems aren't failing. They're being blocked. Something's creating a feedback loop at this intersection." "That's impossible. The system has safeguards." "Safeguards assume normal operation," Chen interrupted. "This isn't normal. Get me a suit and a toolkit. We're going in." Meanwhile, Jake had reached the training bays where hundreds of students were milling in confusion. The evacuation alarms were causing more panic than coordination. "Everyone shut up and listen!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the chaos. The bay fell silent. "Good. We've got 40 minutes to fix this or evacuate 20,000 beings. Here's what we're doing. Krellians, you're on door duty. Some are going to jam when power fluctuates. Etherians, we need light in corridors when systems fail. Vorthens, you're our communication network. Everyone else pair up and start checking sections for stragglers." A young Solanian raised a trembling hand. "But we're just students." "No," Jake said firmly. "You're survivors, and today you're heroes. Move." They moved. Amara found station security in disarray. The security chief was arguing with his subordinates about evacuation protocols while precious time ticked away. "Chief, with respect, shut up," Amara said, pushing to the front. "Computer, display station population distribution." A holographic map appeared showing dense clusters of life signs throughout the station. "We can't evacuate everyone through standard routes," she analyzed. "We need to create additional paths. Chief, your people know this station's maintenance corridors?" "Yes, but those aren't rated for evacuation." "They are now. Divide your teams. Half guide people through main corridors, half open maintenance routes. And someone get me a connection to whoever's coordinating the spacecraft." In the reactor room, Chen and 3 volunteer engineers squeezed through cramped maintenance tubes toward the problem junction. The temperature was rising dangerously, and their suits' cooling systems were struggling. "Human Chen," one engineer gasped. "This is suicide. We should retreat." "In about 30 minutes, this whole station is suicide," Chen replied, checking her scanner. "There, I see the problem." A piece of debris, likely from an earlier maintenance, had lodged in the junction, creating a partial blockage. As coolant backed up, it triggered a cascade of system failures. "Can we remove it?" an engineer asked. "Not safely," Chen admitted, "but we don't need to. We just need to restore flow." She pulled out her toolkit. "We're going to cut a bypass around the blockage. That's not in any manual. Good thing humans don't read manuals. Start cutting." Throughout the station, the human-trained students worked with remarkable efficiency. Krellians forced open doors, creating paths where there were none. Etherians lined corridors with light, guiding evacuees through darkness. Vortanes created a living communication network, coordinating movements across multiple decks. In the council chambers, the assembled dignitaries watched in amazement as beings they'd dismissed as students managed their evacuation with military precision. "How are they so organized?" Ambassador Thule demanded. High Counselor Vrexmai pulsed thoughtfully. "They're using human protocols, distributed leadership, adaptive responses, species-specific task allocation." On the command deck, Amara had taken de facto control of evacuation coordination. Multiple screens showed the progress of various teams, spacecraft docking sequences, and the ominously climbing reactor temperature. "Bay 7, you've got 300 incoming," she directed. "Bay 9, launch when you hit capacity. Don't wait for full load. Medical teams to Junction C4. We've got injured coming up from the lower decks." The security chief watched her work with awe. "How do you track all this?" "Practice," Amara replied without looking away from her screens. "On Earth, we call this Tuesday." In the reactor room, Chen's team had successfully cut through the first layer of piping. Sweat poured down her face, despite the suit's cooling systems. 15 minutes to critical," one engineer reported. "We'll make it," Chen said, starting on the second layer. "Has anyone ever told you about human stubbornness? Is this really the time for cultural exchange?" "Perfect time. See, humans have this thing where we take impossible situations personally. This reactor thinks it can kill us? Not happening. Not on my watch." Her determination infected the others. They cut faster, worked harder, pushed past exhaustion and fear. With 7 minutes to spare, they broke through the final layer. Coolant rushed through the bypass, pressure immediately dropping throughout the system. "It's working," an engineer cried. "Core temperature stabilizing." "Don't celebrate yet," Chen warned. "We need to—" The junction exploded. Not catastrophically. The pressure release was controlled, but forcefully enough to slam Chen against the maintenance tube wall. Her suit's integrity held, but warning lights flashed across her vision. "Chen's suit is compromised," an engineer reported. "Oxygen leak! Get out of there now!" Jake's voice crackled over comms. "Can't!" Chen gasped, checking her readings. "Someone needs to monitor the bypass. Make sure it holds. The temperature will cook you." "Got about 3 minutes of air," Chen calculated. Bypass needs 2 minutes to stabilize. Math works out. She turned to the other engineers. Get back to the reactor room. Monitor from there. We're not leaving you. That's an order. Move. They moved, reluctantly. Chen settled against the hot metal wall, watching her oxygen gauge drop while monitoring the bypass flow. The math did work out. Barely. Throughout the station, evacuation proceeded with clockwork efficiency. The human-trained teams had cleared entire sections, guiding thousands to safety. Even species known for their panic responses stayed calm, trusting in the protocols they'd learned. In his command center, Jake tracked Chen's suit telemetry with growing alarm. Gorthak, get your fastest runner to maintenance tube 7. Chen needs extraction in 90 seconds. Already moving, the Krellian replied, though she'll complain about the rescue. Let her complain breathing, Jake shot back. The runner, a sleek Velocitan who'd joined the program just weeks ago, reached Chen with 20 seconds of oxygen remaining. She was still conscious, still monitoring the bypass, still stubborn. Time to go, instructor, the Velocitan said, lifting her easily. The bypass is stable, reactor temperature normal, station saved, now shut up and breathe. Chen didn't have enough oxygen to argue. The evacuation ultimately proved unnecessary. Thanks to Chen's bypass and the coordinated efforts of hundreds of beings, the station's reactor was stabilized with 4 minutes to spare. The catastrophe was averted not through advanced technology or superior strength, but through human stubbornness and alien cooperation. In the aftermath, as beings slowly returned to their quarters and duties, the Galactic Council reconvened. The mood had shifted dramatically. I motion, High Counselor Vrexmai announced, for the immediate adoption of human survival protocols as standard training across all Council worlds. Seconded, Ambassador Thule added immediately. I've just watched students half my age manage a crisis that would have paralyzed veteran emergency responders. Whatever the humans are teaching, we need it. The vote was unanimous. Later that evening, the 3 humans finally reunited in the medical bay where Chen was being treated for heat exposure and oxygen deprivation. She'd already tried to escape twice. You know, Jake said, sitting on the adjacent bed, when we agreed to teach a few classes, I didn't expect to revolutionize galactic civilization. Or nearly die in a reactor tube, Chen added, wincing as a medical drone fussed over her burns. That was just showing off, Amara teased, though the bypass idea was brilliant. Stupid, but brilliant. The best kind of human solution, Chen agreed. Professor Zixitheta entered, her chromatophores displaying colors they'd never seen before. The Council has approved a new initiative. Human survival training will be mandatory at all educational institutions. They want you 3 to design the curriculum. The humans exchanged glances. That's a lot of responsibility, Amara said slowly. It's also a lot of aliens learning that impossible just means try harder, Jake pointed out. And a lot of lives saved, Chen added. They looked at each other again, then burst out laughing. Because of course they'd take the job. They were human. Impossible challenges were what they did for fun. Over the following months, the human protocol spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Military units adopted buddy systems. Emergency responders learned percussive maintenance. Children on 100 worlds practiced controlled falling and fire starting. The survival rate for accidents, disasters, and emergencies began climbing steadily. Species that had never cooperated began training together. The galaxy was becoming a safer place not through advanced technology or protective regulations, but through the simple principle that everyone could survive if given the right knowledge and mindset. The Etherians developed a saying, "Think like a human." It meant approaching problems with creativity rather than power. The Krellians adopted a motto, "Stubborn as a Deathworlder." It was the highest compliment they could give. The Vorthans added a new teaching to their collective consciousness. Alone we survive. Together we thrive. They credited humans with the revelation. A year after the reactor incident, the three humans stood before a gathering of their former students, now instructors themselves. The ceremony was to commemorate the opening of the galaxy's first interspecies survival academy. "You've all come so far," Amara addressed the crowd. "From students afraid of temperature changes to teachers ready to pass on what you've learned. Remember," Chen added, "survival isn't about being the strongest or having the best equipment. It's about refusing to give up, helping others, and being creative when standard solutions fail. And if all else fails," Jake concluded with a grin, "hit it with a wrench and see what happens." The crowd laughed, a sound that included dozens of species versions of humor. It was beautiful. As the ceremony concluded and beings mingled, sharing stories and techniques, Gorthak approached the three humans. "I have been thinking," he said, "about your term Death World. We use it to describe Earth because your planet tries to kill you. But I think we misunderstood." "Oh?" Chen asked, curious. "It's not that Earth is a world of death. It's that Earth is a world that teaches you to defeat death, every day, in countless ways, and you've shared that gift with us." The Krellian placed his massive hand over his chest in a formal salute. "Thank you, Deathworlders, for teaching us to live." As he walked away, the three humans stood in comfortable silence, watching their students become teachers, their lessons ripple across the galaxy. "So," Jake said eventually, "want to design an advanced course?" "I'm thinking zero-gravity firefighting." "Ooh, or deep space agriculture," Chen suggested. "Teaching people to grow food in impossible conditions." "Why not both?" Amara laughed. "Plus extreme weather preparedness, hostile terrain navigation, and maybe a unit on befriending dangerous wildlife." They walked toward their office, already planning new ways to share human insanity with the galaxy. Behind them, the academy buzzed with activity. Dozens of species learning from each other, preparing for challenges they once thought impossible. The Deathworlders had done more than ace the extreme survival class. They'd turned survival itself into an art form that anyone could master, and in doing so, they'd proven that humans weren't special because they came from a dangerous world. They were special because they'd learned to make danger mundane, to turn certain death into minor inconvenience, and most importantly, to believe that everyone else could do the same. After all, on a death world, you don't survive alone. You teach others to survive with you, and sometimes, when you're very lucky, you change the entire galaxy in the process. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small lives below. But those lives were a little safer now, a little more confident, a little more human in their approach to the impossible. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, death itself might have smiled ruefully, knowing that the Deathworlders had shared its greatest secret. It's not about avoiding death. It's about looking death in the eye and saying, "Not today. I've got people to save and impossible things to do. Come back later." That was the human way. And now, it was becoming the galaxy's way, too.